Hi, it's Charlene SanJenko, and I am with Tricia Stevens, who is kind enough to join me today for a conversation on brand allyship. I want to introduce you to Tricia, who excels in forging genuine connections through storytelling, aligning audiences with brands' core values. Tricia has over 20 years in nurturing purpose-driven businesses, and she's elevated their profiles through authentic engagement beyond mere sales. Her strategic insights have cultivated deep consumer loyalty, established market leadership, and produced award-winning films and campaigns that contributed to significant socio-environmental policy changes in British Columbia and beyond. So, of course, I'm going to want to have a conversation with my friend and colleague, Tricia, about brand allyship, what she's experienced, where you see it possibly going in the future, what you're most excited about. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah. Hi, Charlene. It's a pleasure to be here and spend time with you and to have been able to partner with you kind of on that journey and to get to know you and your team at reGEN Media and the positive impacts that you're looking to have and how you're looking to engage with brands in this space is inspiring. And I think in itself a lesson for folks that are looking at what kind of models could be successful in the future around really purpose-led brand allyship.
Thank you. I love what you and Inder and the team are up to at Kahani Pictures. I know you have extensive experience and a wealth of wisdom in the space of working with brands. And I wondered if you could just maybe contextualize kind of where you've been in the space and kind of where you are now with the team, and just give us a little bit of context as to how we're coming into this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would say that my journey really started by actually working within a purpose-led brand. And so I spent, over 2 decades working for Lush Cosmetics and did many things throughout my career there. But for the latter half of my career, I supported and managed a lot of the philanthropic initiatives for the North American business. So from our charitable giving program, which was a granting mechanism that provided grants to grassroots organizations focused on human rights, environmental justice, and animal protection, really provided a lot of this sort of like insight and growth that I have had in my career, because you're partnering directly with communities and really going through a process of understanding, listening, and learning, and really trying to think about what does the word allyship even mean. And that can be different community to community, but certainly the actions and the behaviors and the things that you put into practice as an individual and as an organization to really understand how to show up in a position of allyship is something that you can, really hone in on and utilize as you're looking at how you're supporting and showing up for whether it be your own community at the organization you're working for or the communities that you're looking to partner deeply with. So I would say first and foremost, that's kind of the experience that I come from, is being sort of in that corporate space that was, rooted in a lot of, ethics and values in sort of its DNA. But then ultimately, how does then that show up when you're working with community? Because it's not like you're just able to transplant your values on top of another community's values, but the behaviors and actions and the practices and how you go about understanding and learning what allyship is something that you can certainly build upon and replicate as in terms of your own process for how you're doing that as a brand. And for us, it really does come back to relationships. So when you're thinking about what does allyship mean to you as an individual or in your leadership role on whatever team or part of an organization you're in, for us, it comes down to how are we building relationships that then become relationships rooted in trust and mutual respect. And that doesn't come from, one phone conversation or one visit. It comes from many, many times of showing up in a way that is authentic and is transparent. And once you've kind of built that trust, from there, you have a place to start thinking about, well, what are the ways that we can really deeply partner? How does this not come across as extractive, whereas a brand, we're looking to, utilize these pieces to leverage, whether it be brand differentiation or marketplace position, that we're truly doing this from a place of reciprocity. So here's what we can, support you on, and what we want to give to support how to move whatever it is forward, whether it's elevating an issue or supporting economic or, social opportunities in community. And then how on this end do we also look at what can we utilize that and from you all in terms of your leadership and your knowledge. And that's not possible unless you focus on the relationship and focus on kind of building that trust, which is not necessarily always easy. But to me, I think that's where the root of the work is in the individual journey in building that. And then how as an organization do you do that, and then do that consistently. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's a bit of a long answer to your question around how do I come to that space. And then, through that work that I was doing while working at Lush, we also focused a lot on storytelling and on narrative, and looking to have diverse voices be sharing what those experiences were like. Again, not being underneath of like, here's what we want to say as a brand, but how do we leverage our, our channels, our audiences, our staff to become ambassadors for change in terms of like whatever the issue or focus area might be, and then authentically let those stories be told. And so it was kind of the collaboration of like working in community at that sort of like grassroots frontline level, and seeing the power that can come from transformative media that's led me on my journey where I'm at today with Kahani Pictures, which, as you mentioned, my husband Indra and I co-own, and we basically provide impact storytelling for purpose-led brands, nonprofit organizations, and other folks out in community who are really looking to advance, social, economic, animal welfare issues. And so it's sort of that experience with the brand lens, like seeing that kind of happen from the inside to kind of understand that piece, but also a lot of the learning that I'm so grateful for that I got to get directly from community and community leaders that sort of shaped how we think about allyship. And then again, I think that relationship piece is just so important, that we wouldn't be able to do the work we do if we didn't have almost like that history of trust that's been built, because certainly other organizations like yourselves are looking to partner with people who really have that, credibility and that history. And that being said, we're always on a journey of learning and unlearning, and every community and situation is unique, which is what makes the work so much fun, is to have that diversity coming through in terms of like the folks we get to work with, and ultimately the stories that we're helping to tell.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm curious. I think that I have a belief, and maybe it's just the eternal optimist that is in me, but I do have a belief that brands want to do better. There are definitely purpose-driven brands, and we know them and we love them. And I also think that there's brands that are kind of moving in that direction, that just they almost need to be like taken by the hand a little bit and be willing to have conversations that explore what might be possible. I'm wondering if you've had conversations in the last year or in the last few months around helping understand, or helping brands understand, basically back in the day, a brand would look at an opportunity and it would be like, well, what's the value for my brand? And it would be XYZ, and it would be very transactional, and it would be very, and I think one place that you and I and our teams intersect is like, yeah, and it's also about bringing voice to brand values, and the values that you want to embody and be known for and fully step into. And those measurements and metrics of a successful partnership may or may not look and be a little different. And I'm just really curious. I think my question is around how how are we understanding and talking about what brands value right now and where the opportunities to partner for the highest like purpose, like really impactful partnerships, where that is and how we dig into that conversation a little bit further, you know, going into the coming months. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or recent conversations around that.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and also makes me think about, yeah, continuum and trajectory and where folks are at in that journey. And interestingly enough, we just worked on a project with it's a project of United Way called the Social Purpose Institute. And so we got to work with them to kind of think through how do they talk about their offering that they have specifically to small and medium-sized businesses and beyond, to really work with not only their leadership team, but other people within the organization to really land on their why. And these are brands that are, you know, doing good, they're giving back. And there's even some challenges around thinking through, can we get everybody on the same page with understanding, like, what is our reason for being? Like, that is beyond the product that we offer or the service that we offer. And so I'm seeing more and more brands really want to dig into that work, the time for that work. So trying to get yourself away, you know, from the day to day, and it's a different type of strategy, and then becomes sort of your North Star that you then start making decisions around. So I'm definitely seeing brands go beyond the mission and the vision statement to really what is our social purpose, our why statement, and our reason for being, which is very exciting. And then from there, looking at how do they take that to really drive decision making, but also actions. So we're really kind of seeing these like purpose statements kind of show up in ways before where maybe you haven't seen them so embedded into the everyday decision making of an organization and their operations, which is really exciting. And in having conversations with these business leaders from all, you know, different sectors, we're hearing from them how this has really provided clarity for them, not just for their leadership team, but for other people within the organization to know what they're driving towards. And again, what they're contributing to on sort of that kind of like larger level, like you mentioned, like what are they doing in their daily work that is improving their community or improving, you know, society sort of more broadly around the work. We're hearing that it's helping them attract and retain the talent that they want to see, that there's a lot of, you know, younger folks who are looking to be employed in a purpose-led brand. So what does it mean for you to be, you know, showing up that way? And certainly customers wanting their money to go to places that align with their values. So I think when you kind of add all of that up and hear what, you know, business leaders are saying, simply put, if you don't start this journey and don't start accelerating that, you're not going to be the business of choice for employees that are looking for a place to kind of like, you know, build their career. And then you're certainly not going to be a place of choice for customer dollars. So I think simply put, what we're kind of seeing is the change around that is more of an urgency for brands, not to just start saying, here's my mission, here's my vision, here's my purpose, but to really, when you actually look behind the curtains, that is really rooted in actions that have been taken, not just at a leadership level, but how embedded that is across the organization, and then the decisions that they're making, maybe away from doing harmful practices in the past. And how do we actually name that and be transparent about it? Because I think that's the other piece that we're seeing is business owners being not as afraid to talk about the stuff over here that maybe before you'd think, well, that doesn't look like we're being seen in you know, the best light possible, so let's not talk about that. We all know business is complicated. We all know that there's impacts somewhere in the work that we do. So naming those impacts, whether they be negative or positive, you're actually seeing a lot more conversation happen sort of cross industry with business leaders, which I think is really exciting. And as we kind of get to a place where those things can be discussed publicly or within working groups, then you start seeing change at an industry level, which I think is really exciting. And so to answer kind of the first part of that, this is this exciting stuff that I'm seeing in sort of kind of the brand space. And then in terms of then how can you show up more in an ally position, I think brands are now more able to do that authentically. So we're seeing less, I want to do this because it gives me brand positioning, where they actually truly care about this issue, care about this community, and want to really align. That mission and purpose statement often was designed with community in mind, which I'm finding very, very exciting and interesting, that you didn't just yourself come up with this and throw some words up on the wall. You actually put this out to community and folks that you would consider your stakeholder group to really truth that, which I think, again, is a process that's not necessarily easy. And you may hear things that you weren't expecting, either positively or in areas of improvement. But again, once you get there in the end, you're like, we actually are very proud about where this is going. And then again, can do the partnership that shows the long-term impact that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so many things I love about what you said. I think to kind of tie that maybe into an actionable question. So let's pretend that there is someone that's hearing this conversation and that they're at mid or senior level of leadership within a brand, who is, trying to do better. And everything you've said is just like, and they're not the only one to make the decision. They're kind of like, they know this is the direction that we need to be kind of moving into. And it's very much that, like, doing the internal work so it's authentic, and doing the external engagement work so that it's known, and balancing the two. What guidance might you have for them to try to move something like this forward in their organization in a good way? We all jokingly talk about, we want to be the next Patagonia. We see the good work that REI is doing. Like, everybody holds up those two companies as the example, but it's like, there's this missing middle that I know we can move more folks into, but it takes brave internal champions and sometimes leaders of, founders of small to mid-sized businesses. What guidance would you have for those individuals who might be in a leadership position to kind of champion something moving forward in their organization in a good way? Just what conversations, what actions? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can certainly share from my perspective, but there are probably hundreds of examples and things that, people can do given like the culture or what it is that's happening within your organization uniquely. But I think there is a lot of power in the employee voice. So as much as, yes, having key stakeholders at a leadership level, at your, executive level, et cetera, is very important. But I think there's a lot that can happen with having really great conversations as employees or as an employee group. And so employee resource groups I've seen be really effective. So if you have one around sustainability or one around people and culture and what have you. So having sort of a way to get together with colleagues and have that be a priority, that voices can be heard with inside an organization, whether you're doing that, in person or with focus groups or through surveys. There's ways that you can kind of combine information to really get an understanding of what is it that motivates employees beyond the position or beyond promotion or beyond the product that you sell. And, from a lot of the research and information that we're seeing, employees really do want to work somewhere that aligns with their values. So it's not a stretch to think that you're going to have really in-depth conversations with the folks working within your organization to kind of get an understanding of that and being able to bring that forward to leadership. So from either side of it, like, how are things being able to be a two-way conversation in terms of what is it that's being fed into leadership? And then what is it that leadership is able to kind of feed back and contribute? So you really do have open lines of communication and dialogue. And then ultimately, hopefully you're creating very specific positions within your organization related to these impact areas. Like, I'm not saying they have to be called a social purpose unicorn or whatever some of the interesting titles we're seeing come out these days, but just that you have a way that there are people that's their job is to be listening to employees, listening to customers, understanding bigger issues, whether it be around the climate emergency, et cetera. So from that, how do you then narrow that down and decide where do you want to focus first? Because as much as we want to have the bandwidth to tackle all of these large, social, environmental issues we have, you can't expect any one business to do that. So finding the things that you feel really are going to connect your employee group, your other stakeholder group, and then looking at ways to really name that, whether again, that's creating a mission or a vision or a purpose statement, is where I think is where you really start, where you have a lot of strength. If this is positionally how employees want the company to show up in community, and then you're truthing that in community that this is the kind of support they need, I can't see why leadership would not, really value that in terms of looking at how do we now use this as a decision-making tool, and then put steps in place within your organization so that these things can become more formalized, whether that's in the way of how you're naming this or communicating about it, or how you're actually creating career paths within your organization for people to really focus on these things. So those would be some advice for, folks that are working within organizations that really want to champion stuff. And from a leadership perspective, I think that we are seeing, endless amounts of data on how employees are really expecting senior leadership to show up for issues themselves, not just standing behind the company name, but you, the CEO, or you, the COO, you're actually out there talking about your values in alignment with direction and where the company is going. So having statistics around that as well to share with your executive team on what we're seeing, partnered with what employees and or community are saying, is certainly kind of a recipe for having sort of, everything in front of folks so that really, smart decisions can be made. So you're making a decision, with your head in terms of how to move the business forward, but you're also making decisions based on, your heart and that impact that you want to have in community. So I guess that's from sort of my experience and some of the things that I'm sort of hearing and learning from other business owners, as well as people employed within companies, would be a way to maybe start thinking about how to pick through some of that.
Amazing. I just want to highlight those 3 things again, and then I'm going to ask just a final kind of wrap up question. The goal that you just laid down, I want to make sure people picked up, and that was there's 3 really easy steps to move this forward. They're simple. Maybe they're not easy. I don't know, but consider forming an employee resource group was a really tangible step, and I love that. And then you talked about making way for making sure that you've created pathways for a 2-way conversations, which I love. And then the third thing you said was just take a stand on something, like name it, which I think is so true and smart, because how do you know if someone is like your people, or like if you're making a choice about where you want to work or where you want to do business, I know myself, I'm like, are these my people? And one of the reasons that I wanted, with reGEN to do some work with Kahani was because when I met you and Inder, and you were highly recommended to me, when I had a conversation with you, that's what happened. I was like, these are my people. And I think that we have to be willing to take a stand and talk about what's important to us, what our values are. That's just where we're at in history right now. So that being said, I'd love to just give you some space to maybe talk a tiny bit more about the work that you and Inder and the team are stepping into. And when would someone pick up the phone or send you an email to do work with you? And just let them know that opportunity and what that looks like and feels like. A little more about Kahani, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much for, really summarizing kind of those takeaways for people. And the one thing before I kind of talk a bit about Kahani that I just want to say around like the roles that brands can play in this work. And like you were saying, the time really is now. When we look at some of the information around sort of like what are the most trusted institutions in the world right now, the number one is brands over government, even over nonprofits, over media. So the sheer sort of like power that is held there, and I don't use that word loosely because there is so much opportunity for that to be done in a way that can deliver stuff that can be super meaningful, and on the other hand, can still continue to have negative impacts. So just to kind of say that we are in a time where there is a lot of trust coming out of sort of like what brands are saying and how they're able to kind of like support from a really meaningful way. So I just would like to say that in terms of any of the people working in a brand space. And I like to kind of hark back to Yvonne Chenard from Patagonia once said when I was at a tools conference, I got to go and attend that at Patagonia alongside their grant partners. And he was like, if you have the ability, then you have the responsibility. So how do you think about like as a business, you do have opportunity to really impact in a positive way and shift resources or shift power or, you know, all these kinds of things that may be relevant to whatever your business functions are. So just to kind of leave people with that and from a place of hopefully inspiration, not like paralysis that we don't know how to move forward. Like there's definitely is a massive opportunity. People are expecting brands to show up differently, and you certainly can find the way to carve out time and resources to do that, because ultimately this is where brands need to be into the future to be sustainable. So it's not only good for community, it's also a very good long-term sustainability play for your organization and the health of your business into the future.
Yeah, I so agree. So how would somebody know that they were ready to call Kahani, or what might they expect in that invitation to work with you?
Yeah, thanks for that. So basically, Kahani Pictures is a boutique storytelling brand based in Vancouver. And so what we really do, so we've kind of named on our site, like what are our values in terms of who we want to partner with and the types of content that we sort of create. So I guess those are sort of like the tactics of the work. And so we really want to work with purpose-led brands that are on a journey to really being able to have deep conversations about what it is that they're doing. And so we have something that we've kind of coined the Kahani approach, which really is a way of talking about listening and relationship building before we enter into, oh, we want to create a video or we want to create an X. So sometimes we have people that reach out that are reaching out about the actual like, you know, tangible thing they want to see produced. And then we say, well, let's take a step back and actually figure out, well, what is it that you're really wanting to communicate? Like, do you even understand your why, your impact? And so we kind of go through a bit of a conversation with them and then say, okay, well, how we like to start projects with whoever it is we partner with is how do we truth that out in the communities that you're saying that you have this positive impact. And we go on a bit of a listening journey and have various conversations with stakeholders so that then we can come back to, you know, the potential client or our client at that point in time and say, here's the story that we think that you need to tell. And we always look to tell that from a very like human-centered approach so that it is like very documentary kind of focus, but also is really rooted in how the work that you're doing as a business is really impacting community. So it's not necessarily about the what you're making, but about the how you're doing that and ultimately the larger why around it. So that's a bit about how our process is different maybe than some other production companies is we're not like wanting to come in at the end of a campaign and be like, oh, how do we create a video that sells this or does that? We want to really be a storytelling partner with you and for you to sometimes help you get to that, you know, why and how if you're not there already, or in some cases get to really dig deeper into that and then highlight stories of how this is really showing up and impacting communities in the way that you hope, coming from their voices and perspectives. So that's kind of a bit about how we approach projects with clients from the, purpose-led brand perspective. And in some cases, we can even connect brands directly to organizations doing work that they care about that they often didn't know about, which can create, a relationship journey, again, around them being able to partner more deeply with community. And then from a nonprofit perspective, I think those connections are a lot more instant. As you were mentioning, these are my people. They can look at a lot of the work that we've done kind of in these spaces to move issues forward, or may even know of the organizations we partner with. And that's really, again, a journey of understanding like how will what we deliver at Kahani really advance your movement or support the, current campaign or work that you're doing move forward. And then we work with them to kind of provide discounts on those services, because we know that, nonprofit organizations struggle for funding. So we look for models within the work so that we can have our, brand partners potentially offsetting some of the discount work that we can provide to our nonprofit partners, to then let us apply that to do in-kind services for community and for issues, for free. So that's a bit of the model that we're playing around with, is how many, brand partners do we need to allow us to provide, this discount is not the right word, to allow us to provide services that are more affordable to our nonprofit partners, to then ultimately be in a place where we can do in-kind work and really kind of name, how many of those and what does that look like, and who are we partnering with over here that we can really shift those resources from potentially brand marketing dollars over into community storytelling, which I know really closely aligns with the work that you're looking to do at reGEN.
I love that. Yeah, I always say when we can start to put impact deals together, like we have always kind of put business deals together, then I think we're going to really see the acceleration of what's possible in the impact and transformative space in terms of like shifting the narrative. And what I love about the model that you're working on in terms of how to work with brands in a good way that allows more community groups and nonprofit stories to be told in a more affordable way. It's really about shifting resources in ways that make sense, where values align. And it's, my wording is, you're putting the deals together that make sense and building those partnerships and those relationships. And I really love that so much. And I admire that so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I do think one of the kind of pieces too is like often brands don't think about documentary film or this type of narrative storytelling to be something that they may dip their toe in, or we don't fund documentaries. And it's just actually a different way to think about storytelling. And then also thinking about that audience reach that you have. Like a film doesn't necessarily have to go down a traditional distribution channel where it ends up on, a streaming service or in a theater. If you think about the audience that a brand has, from, its customer base to its employee base, suppliers, et cetera, that's potentially so many new eyes on an issue on, that someone's not heard about. So the amount of change that you can create by making individuals catalysts for change, I think is really, really an exciting part about, I know where you want to kind of move forward, and certainly things that we think about and I have seen successful in terms of other brands really champion the use of film to advance movements and kind of uplift narratives and voices that are often unheard of, is an incredible opportunity for businesses as well, and one that we're very, very excited about.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for the conversation today and for sharing with us some of your learnings, your wisdom, and some of the things that you're pushing into. I really appreciate it. And I know that how we look at advertising and marketing, I know we're on a tipping point. I know that so much more is possible. And I'm just so grateful to know you and to kind of be working alongside you in this endeavor of what is possible in this space. So thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlene, and to you and your team for really being, vanguards as well in this space and the work and the change agents that you are. I look forward to seeing where reGEN goes in the future and any future collaborations we can partner on together.